Hey YouTube. So if you remember this mock-up here, this aluminum one, is where I started, and because my weekend was tied up I haven't had a chance to work on this anymore, so I'm abandoning this for a better idea. Similar but better. So again, this is going to be the base. Okay, this is made out of just some poster board. And then what I want to do is I'm going to make a piece that's shaped like this. Okay, and if you look there you can see, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's 45, 30, and 15 degree angles marked on that. The reason for this is because 45, when the 45 is in line with the base, and then the 30 gets to be in line, and the 15 gets to be in line, these are the numbers, these are the angles that I need to have to be able to take a quarter sawn log, a quarter of it, and put it on here and get, and every time I make a cut it will be a true quarter sawn. Now true quarter sawn is something I said myself, I've never heard it said before, it doesn't matter. What I mean by true quarter sawn is that there's no riff in it at all. You're not, the angles are 90 degrees to the face of the board rather than, a variation of plus or minus 30. I get a little tired of the variations, and to be honest with you, I've done a lot of surveying, construction surveying in my life, and variations are what causes mistakes down the road. So you want to try and get as close as you can to measuring things. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just my own pet peeve. I'm trying to make true quarter sawn boards so that there's no rift, there's no mistakes in them, they're just quarter sawn. And these are the angles I'll need. And the way I plan on working this thing is I want to be able to, like I say, roll this back and forth through these 3 different angles. I'm considering drilling a bolt hole through here and just slip a bolt in so that each angle has its own hole to be able to set that. That means I'm going to have something in here so that it rests on the bunk, and then there's a space so I can get a bolt in. That's what I'm working with so far. So that'll look like that when it's basically finished. Also, I found out that if you have this 4 inches away from the little stop on the Lt15 bunk, you'll find out that you're able to cut a bigger log because it moves the log more towards the center of the sawmill where you have the high amount of angle to make cuts on bigger logs. Well guys, I came outside for a couple minutes to get a breath of air, and it looks like we're getting some snow flurries here. It's typical. This should have been here a month ago. Let's see what the temperature is in the kiln. I still have some outside work to do. I wish I could get it done. I've got more than I can do here. Bit off more than I can chew, as they say. It's 50 degrees in there. Yeah, 50. It's 32, 46, 36 in here, or outside. So that's why it's not sticking anywhere to snow yet. Got a little fire going in the garage. Nice and warm in there. So I've been working on that tool. I'll show it to you as soon as I get a little bit of an update there. So these metal pieces, this is the piece I was chasing. That's the whole piece laid out, so you can see the metal pieces are there. Now that's pretty heavy stuff. Let me just see the thickness of this. 3/16. Yeah, this is 3/16 steel, so it's a little too hard to bend. When you bend it, you don't get true readings. At least I don't, because of the way I bend it. But so what I'll do is I'll probably just cut down these lines, and then I'll weld the pieces back to that on a 90. So there's 2 of them there. This would be for both tools, one at one end of the Woodmizer and one at the other end of the Woodmizer. I'll keep you updated. Okay, so you can see that the snow's starting to stick a little bit, and I'm still in the process of mocking this thing up. The only thing is I'm actually welding the steel together, and I'll show you how this thing is going to work. Again, the basic bottom there is pretty much like what I had on the siding cutter. The only difference here is I want to be further away from this stop. So I'm 4 inches away from the stop, because that's going to put the high part of the log more towards the center of the mill. That'll give me the ability to cut higher. Then I have this piece. Now there's got to be holes drilled in here, but here's what I'm after. I want to be able to set this thing in here, and I want this on a 45. Okay? So the log will sit there on a 45, there'll be 2 of them, and then I need to be able to cut at a 30, and I need to be able to cut at a 15. So I have the angles figured out, I just don't have them marked on here. So that's where I'm at so far with this thing. Now as far as holding the log in place, I haven't come up with that yet, but I'm working on it. So there'll be 3 holes in here. 1 for 45, 1 for 30, and 1 for 15. And that will be the cuts that I need to make to get true quarter sawn boards. And again, I'm working on what's called the radial cutting. I'm going to start from all of my cuts originate from the center. And what that means is when I cut through here, it'll be true quarter sawn boards. Okay, you can see the curves on these, the annual rings, you can see them on there. As long as you're cutting through the center, no matter where you cut, as long as part of the center is on there, you will get a radial cut, okay, and it'll be an exact quarter sawn board. It's my own thing, this is what I'm after, and that's what I want to be able to do. This tool is going to do that for me. Like I say, once you make the cut, when a log that's quarter sawn or a quarter of a log, when it's cut, you will be cutting here and here. Those leftover pieces are what has to be able to be cut at 30 and 15 degrees. Okay? And you'll still end up with all quarter sawn wood. And that's what I'm after. This is just a mock-up, guys. I got to do a lot of grinding on this thing. I'm just trying to figure out how to get it together at the moment. Oh boy. Yeah, so the weather changed pretty much. You can see it's sticking in the woods pretty good. My kiln is still cooking, and let me see what the temperature is in there. Yeah, it's still 50. So anyway, in Pennsylvania we're getting some snow, at least in the higher elevations anyhow. Alright guys, well I thought you might want to see that. I'll keep you in touch with how I do with this thing. Have a good one. I was going to stop the video at the end of that tool thing, but I decided to take Bullseye out for a walk, and I figured we'd do a little talk on the rest of some of that stuff that we started talking about before. If you remember, I talked about the 4 M's, which is money, machinery, material, and manpower. So I talked about machinery, and I talked about material. I'm going to talk about money's going to be the longest, so I'm going to talk about manpower. The first thing an estimator does, you know, is try to figure out, and I say try with tongue in cheek here, you try to figure out the hours that it'll take to do something, man hours. On some things it's very easy, and in some things it's not so easy, it's rather difficult. So the reason for that is because different people work at different speeds. You don't know if they had a bad day, I mean, at least with equipment you can tune it up and always make it run a certain way, more or less, with some effort. But people sometimes can give you the most amount of grief. You can have somebody who has a perfect day, is doing everything right, like say they're running equipment or a machine or doing anything, it doesn't matter what it is, and then the next day they come in and maybe they had a fight, maybe they had a bad drive, maybe they have a slight headache or whatever, and that slows them down, and in the process it also increases the amount of man hours that it takes to do something. So that's why I say that man hours and manpower is the hardest thing to figure out. Now, when it comes to that, manpower, this is where an owner of a company wants to have, or you have to be it yourself, they want somebody that can be good with men, can motivate them, or women, motivate them all the time. And by the way, guys, when I say guys, I mean men and women. So just so I clear that up now, because some of the best project managers I've ever seen are women. Anyway, let me get back to what I was saying. You want to hire a foreman or a superintendent who can motivate people. Usually the superintendent is too high on the chain because he's not down in the trenches. So a foreman is usually down in the trenches with the men, and he can usually motivate them pretty well. Now, if you have a bad foreman, he can also destroy the things you're trying to do. So today, a lot of people, what they do is they actually share, which we never did this in the older days, but they share now information on estimating. So in other words, the estimator will give to the project foreman a paper that shows how many hours he actually figured to do a certain job. Say, like, we used to put pipe in the ground, or, you know, whatever it is, roof shingles, it doesn't matter what it is, anything at all you can figure out. You know, you should be able to, from, again, historical data, how long it takes to do something. So if you take and show the man who's in charge of that project, a lot of times it'll put in his head, okay, these are the hours we have to work to be able to accomplish this, and it'll tend to help him now, and sometimes force him to take the day and divide it up into sections or blocks of work so that they finally get things finished. And that's something that's part of this, you know, project management that has to be done. You have to have somebody who can motivate people, and if it's not the owner of the company, then it has to be someone else. So if you have to hire someone else to make those things happen, then that's the best thing you can do. Come on. So anyway, yeah, so with manpower, the things that you have to calculate with manpower, now it depends, you know, what type of situation you're in, whether you're union or non-union or other things like that. But as far as benefits go, a lot of the benefits that people get in union paid jobs, they do not get in private companies. Although the private companies, some good ones, are starting to give actually better benefits than what the union workers get. It all depends on the company. But what I'm getting at here is, when you figure manpower, things that are incorporated in that are not only the, like, insurance costs for a man, if you're paying for his fuel to get to work, or the time he doesn't get to work, you know, like whatever his hours are, I mean, you have to calculate all that stuff. And plus, I usually add, and this may change, it's up to the IRS, as much as 30% more for other stuff. You know, there's other taxes that you have to pay yourself. You have to match, I think I'm not positive anymore, guys, it's been a while, but I think you match Social Security, if I don't remember right, and I think you also had to pay workman's comp insurance. So, you know, that's stuff that the workman doesn't really know about too much. But anyhow, yeah, the manpower is difficult. Now, let me explain something to you, how manpower affects other parts of the project. Manpower, like if you have machinery that's being run by a man, then when you figure out that the machinery can move so much dirt, and, you know, like say a bulldozer or whatever can move so much dirt in a certain amount of time, the man behind the machine has to do that work. And again, if he's goofed up somehow or is having a bad day, you know, that can affect how things take place. So what you need is to try and, you know, have a foreman or somebody who can either talk to them. You know, sometimes you have to do actual counseling. So it's really hard to find a foreman who's good enough to do a little bit of counseling, you know, understands married life, understands single life, understands, you know, the headaches that go along with just every day-to-day stuff. But at the same time, he has to be somebody who's going to push to get the work done. It can't be just somebody that's, you know, kissing butt just because he wants people to like him. That's a no-no. He's not there to be liked. He's there to get my work done, if it's for me or for any other person. But you still have to put up with some of that, and you have to deal with it. Now, you can say no to some of it. You know, if people come into late work all the time, well, then that's no good. You know, you got to get rid of them. But let me just explain this to you. If a guy works, and this used to aggravate me so bad with people who smoked. Not that I am against smoking. I don't care what you do. You know, that's up to you. Let's check out Bullseye here. So anyway, what would happen is, like say you have 60 minutes to an hour, and let's say you're figuring your hours out to do a certain job, and out of every hour, 10 or 15 minutes is taken lighting up and standing there smoking your cigarette. That is unfair to the owner, because really every 4 hours that means, you know, you've basically stolen another hour. So 15 minutes out of every hour. So that's not the way things should be, and I'm glad that this is kind of stopping. In construction, it's hard because you're dealing with a different class of people. Sometimes that smoking is something that they really rely on. I don't smoke myself, never did, but I'm just saying it can be a, you know, a pain. People who go out to eat lunch, you know, sometimes they go out and it takes 15 minutes to a half an hour extra. That's money that's not being put back into the kitty, but yet you're putting it out. So, you know, you can say, oh, well, yeah, we can take an hour lunch, and you can feel good about that. But technically, you're only putting yourself out of a job, because if that's how you work, you know, if that's how you allow your people to work, you're putting yourself out of business unless you're charging enough to cover that. If you don't charge enough to cover that, then it's not going to happen. Excuse the whistle, guys. Come on. Attaboy. So, in Manpower, those are the things that concern you the most when it comes to being in business and whether you're going to make money or not. Those are some of the issues. Now, you can offset a lot of that by training. If you take some days, you know, they don't have to be every week, but whatever you can afford, and you literally have people, you know, you have to pay them to get their interest. But if you pay them to come in on a Saturday morning for a couple of hours, you know, and teach them how to do something, even if it's a little bit out of their scope of work, this improves what you have in Manpower. You know, I got a comment the other day, I don't know who it was from, but it was in reference to knowing something about a lot of things or whatever. The way I look at it is like this: the more you know about all kinds of things, the more valuable you become to the owner of a company, especially if that company's diverse. If all you know how to do is sit on a stool and calculate numbers, when there's no numbers to calculate, you're out of work, okay? And I used to tell my one son, he's wanted to be an engineer, and I also told him that he should add surveying to that. And the reason for that is because there's no Chinese or Japanese going to drive stakes in from over there. We can drive them in here, so that'll increase his ability to have work. Engineering, yes, they can do over the internet and put it here, but not drive stakes in. So to me, that helps him, for instance, to have a better chance at having a job. Now, you know, that's my own theory. It's always worked for me because, you know, the way my dad had me work was I started off as a laborer, then he made me run equipment, then he made me work in the office, then I went back out into the field, then I was running a crew, then I was running more than one crew, and it just went on, and it took years and years to learn this, but my dad had the right idea because, you know, it made me get to the point where no matter what somebody's doing, I could understand the hardship they were facing or whether they were bluffing. So this is a little bit of, like I say, to talk about Manpower. So I'm out of breath. I'm out of breath already, guys. I broke one of the arms off of this, but I have a white oak board laying over there that I want to put on here. So, guys, there's a whole lot more to these things that I'm telling you. It's not as simple as I'm making it sound, but it's not that complicated either. I'll talk about money on the next one, and then after that I'm going to show how to actually use the formulas to figure out these prices we're looking for, like by the hour and stuff. And then I'm going to end that series of videos. So guys, have a good one. Wherever you are, I hope you're not slipping and sliding. It looks like it's just on the higher elevations that we're having the snow. It's probably not even snowing in town. Alright, boy, come on, we're going in. Guys, have a very good afternoon and a good night. Bye.